This is part one of a 4-part series where I tell you the signs and symptoms of potential imbalances that you may have with your hormones. The first imbalance that we're going to talk about is an adrenal or HPA axis dysfunction issue. Your nervous system houses different organs like your adrenals, which have a major impact on the rest of your endocrine system, aka the rest of your hormones. And when you are in a chronically stressed state, your nervous system has a cascade effect down onto other hormones. The health of your adrenals and your stress hormones is paramount to the function of all of your other hormones, whether that is your insulin and blood sugar or your progesterone or your estrogen or thyroid. All of these things are very dependent on the function of your nervous system and your adrenal health. And so that's why we're starting with this video. Your adrenal glands produce a hormone called cortisol. And this hormone is produced as a part of the stress response. And when this hormone is produced in too much excess, which it is for a lot of people, when we think about the reasons that people get stressed, whether that is finances or kids or family issues and grief, dying parents or pets, things that are going on emotionally, mentally, or even physically. You're eating way too little, exercising way too much, not sleeping enough. All of these things impact our stress response. And we're living in a time where people are more stressed than they've ever have been. In fact, 75% of the American population of adults reports being chronically overwhelmed or stressed out all the time. And so you can see the negative impact that that has on our health. In fact, 90% of doctor's visits are in some part related or due to stress. So we really have to control and manage this, because it then bleeds into so many other systems of our body, whether that is digestion, immune function, reproductive health, blood sugar, the list goes on and on. Cortisol is made at the expense of other hormones. So for example, when cortisol rises, your heart rate is elevated. Blood sugar also rises to help you deal with and cope with the stress that you are under. When cortisol rises, it steals from progesterone production, meaning you are going to have a harder time getting or staying pregnant because your body doesn't want to reproduce in a time of stress. It knows better than that. So there are really 3 main stages where the stress response starts to happen. First is alarm, then reaction, then exhaustion, because there comes a point to which your adrenals just can't cope anymore. They are exhausted. And even though we hear all the time adrenal burnout is not a real thing, it's actually called HPA axis dysfunction, where your brain cannot tell your adrenals anymore properly and appropriately, effectively and efficiently how much hormone to make and when to make it. And so you are exhausted. But let's go through the other 2 phases before we get there. The first phase is the alarm phase. This is a good, healthy stress response. This is what we want to have happen. This is when you are driving, you swerve into almost hit another car, your cortisol goes up, you feel that fight or flight response, you get super stressed out, you put your horn on, or the other person does, and then you get back in your lane if an accident doesn't happen, and you're calm again. Or you have the mental stress of, an upcoming final or project or deadline at work due, and then your stress comes back down. That's a healthy stress response that we want. And that's when cortisol actually can serve us. It can help us have more energy and a little bit more motivation to deal with whatever stressor is on our plate. However, when we get into the reaction phase, this is when things start to take a turn. So in this reaction phase, adrenaline, epinephrine are not enough to deal with whatever the stressor is, because it's been ongoing for a period of time. And so what then starts to happen is cortisol starts to rise even higher, which elevates your risk for certain diseases, whether that is diabetes, heart disease, other hormonal issues, digestive issues, things like that. This reaction time is really the best time to reverse high cortisol, because you're really able to do more prevention work than you would if you were in that exhaustion and burnout phase. And then we get to exhaustion. And exhaustion typically happens after you've been in the reaction phase for years. It's literally been years where your body has been struggling with that physical, mental, or emotional stress, or a combination of the three. So your body shuts things down. It is trying to conserve energy here. You may experience things like hair loss or super low energy and fatigue or weight gain because your body is conserving energy through fat storage. Your body is down regulating systems. Your immune system is not functioning effectively and efficiently. You are starting to feel completely burnt out. You may even have certain organ systems that start to malfunction and shut down. People often have really sluggish or poor digestion at this point. So you go through all of those phases ending in exhaustion. Now, if you have some sort of nervous system dysregulation, here are the signs that that is something that is going on with you. Really low stress tolerance. You get super irritable and impatient really frequently. Your immune system is off. You get sick like a cold or a flu or a virus all the time when people around you are relatively healthy. When you think about it, you will have really intense cravings, either for sugar or for salt. Those are really big signs that there's some sort of HPA axis dysfunction going on. When it comes to sleep, you probably have trouble falling asleep and staying asleep, but then the next morning you also feel completely and totally exhausted. Typically, you have some sort of weight gain happening around the midsection when there are adrenal issues. Fat storage typically happens around the tummy area, and you take on that body shape that's more apple in shape. When we think about these like adrenal issues, typically people have a lot of brain fog. They can't really focus. They can't really concentrate. They can't really think well because there isn't enough really great blood flow and the energy is all, again, trying to be conserved. So those are just a few symptoms that you may experience if you are somebody dealing with adrenal issues. Now, I hope this video was helpful. Stay tuned for next week where we talk about estrogen dominance, signs and symptoms that may be something that you are struggling with in our 4-part series.